everybody can get settled in your seats. I know people are still coming in, but we want to get started. Music. Thank you. My name is Chimarenga Waller. I'm the National Recruitment Director for the African People's Socialist Party. I want to welcome everyone to this really historic event. If you got the email or text message or call from us, you know that this is an event where we are bringing in one of the representatives from the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, Comrade Marcos Garcia, who is seated over here. He brought his son as well, Alexei. And we thought this event was really important to do because many times, particularly African people, are not up on the things that are going on all over the world, particularly in a place in St. Pete where the media doesn't necessarily concentrate on things that are happening with African people all over the world. But I've been told by Comrade Garcia that Venezuela is approximately 40% African. So that's something that a lot of people don't even realize. And they are African. I don't care if they speak Spanish, English, just like we are African and we speak English. It's depending on where you was dropped off. So we believe that this is a really important event. I want to recognize a couple of people before we do the pledge. Comrade Gaida Cambon is the Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party. Bruce Wright, he does a lot of work on the homeless issues. As a matter of fact, I spoke to him today. Bruce Wright is Ron Bob Simple, if you've never heard Ron Bob Simple do Marcus Garvey, you gotta do that. Yeah. He is Marcus Garvey. I'm telling you, you need to hear that presentation. Because you're calling the whirlwind. Also, the deputy chairperson of the African People's Socialist Party, Ona Ishtella, is Where's Penny Hess? Okay, the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee is also here, and some of the leadership, Kitty Riley and Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Stephanie Midler. If you have I want to also mention a special guest that I invited myself, Reverend Clarence Williams. It's really important to point out that we have all kinds of different people in the room. It's really important to show that because I think it helps Comrade Garcia see that we have a real unified African community in this city, not total unity, but we're getting there. And we have a community that's a fighting community in this city. We took him on a tour earlier of some of the institutions of the Uhuru House, of the gym. So I believe you're going to be in for a treat tonight. For the first time, I know many people are getting a chance to hear an international speaker with these kind of international implications for our movement. So we want to ask people to stand for the African pledge. You may have gotten this document. I know you're used to standing for the American flag, but you're going to do a pledge to African people this time. So if you can follow me and raise your right fist. I pledge allegiance to my African people. I pledge to develop my mind and body to the greatest extent possible. I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to my people and our struggle for liberation through revolution. I will keep myself physically fit, building a strong body free from drugs and other substances which weaken me and make me less capable of defending myself, my family, and my African brothers and sisters. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with others in order to bring about change more quickly. I will discipline myself to energies thoughtfully and constructively rather than wasting time in idle hatred. I will train myself never to hurt or allow others to harm my African brothers and sisters, for I recognize that we need every African man, woman, and child to be physically, mentally, and psychologically strong. These principles I pledge to practice daily and to teach them to others in order to unite my people in the struggle for freedom and independence. Uhuru. One name that I forgot to mention, and I don't know how I did, is the keynote speaker for tonight, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is sitting at this table. And it's really good to see all of you here tonight. We're going to have a bit of culture before we get into the program. It's going to be done by Princess Williams, Princess Bella. So I'm going to bring her up and enjoy the culture, and then we'll go on with the program. Uhuru.
Bingo, bingo. Hello, hello. I got to hook this back up, huh? There we go. There we go. How y'all doing tonight? Uhuru, I just want to say thank you all for coming out. You know, I'm happy to be here before Marcos Garcia and his son and the chairman, Omali Yeshitela. This is really an historical event that's happening in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I just want to say thank you all for coming out. So this song I'm doing is the Omali Yeshitela song. This song was dedicated to him for, you know, the past 40 years, the struggle and the dedication he has put for our people. Uhuru. So before this song starts, I need everybody to get up out their chair. We got to get this hype, okay? I'm ready, bingo. All right. Now this song is called Omali, 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 Omali. Oh! Thank you, thank you, thank you. Put your fist up. Omali, 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 oh Omali, 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 oh Omali, 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 oh oh. Come on and put your fist up. Hey. When I say Uhuru, y'all say freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Now where my chick said, you say you looking for a gangster, a real OG, so where your fist at? Omali Yeshitela standing right here. It's Princess Bella here to make it real clear. He resisted, no petty bourgeoisie, no neo-colonialist, no NAACP. It's only self-determination fighting till we free. And we don't do procrastination, we go full speed. Now where my comrades? Hold your fist high. No Independence Day, no 4th of July. It's still the people's president, chairman for you and I. We got a nation that Omali's trying to unify. Believe it or not, they tried to take us out. Reference to tear gas. Google Uhuru House. Omali Yeshitela, modern day commander of the people, not the gorilla. Come on and put your fist up. Say it. Omali, 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 oh Omali, 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 oh Omali, 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 Omali. When I say Uhuru, y'all say freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. When I say Uhuru, y'all say freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Uhuru. Freedom. Yeah, thank you. Uhuru.
Uhuru. How many people in the room have ever heard Chairman O'Malley speak? Okay, that's everybody. Just about. If you have never heard him speak, you're going to be in for a great treat tonight. Chairman O'Malley has written several books. He has struggled for more than 40 years to build a revolutionary movement, an African revolutionary movement in this country. And he is certainly, without question, one of the greatest revolutionary thinkers of this period. So with no further ado, I want to introduce the main speaker for tonight, Chairman O'Malley, Ishitella of the African People's Socialist Party.
Uhuru. Uhuru, brothers, sisters, and comrades. Let me express my appreciation for everybody who came out. We just have an excellent opportunity here. We've been with Comrade Marcos Garcia on different occasions. He attended our 5th Congress that was held in Washington, D.C. of July of last year. He's been at other events that we've done. And we wanted him to be able to experience our hospitality. So we asked a few people if you'd come out and just share some time with him, because that's what it is. I'm hoping that what we'll do shortly is eat food and play music, and people have an opportunity like to meet Comrade Marcos and his son, so that we can share this experience with each other. We think it's really important. People have characterized this meeting as historic, and I think it is an extremely significant meeting for a number of reasons. One is because most of us have experiences that are kind of limited to the communities that we live in. We don't have an opportunity to experience the world. In fact, most of us are motivated by questions of food, clothing, and shelter. How are we going to eat? Where we're going to get resources to make it. And if you live in this community, if you're African, you're also concerned about the police. What the police has just recently done, or what they're going to do tomorrow, or something to that effect. And the truth is that it's a big world. And we are not isolated, because that's another thing that we experience a lot of, particularly African people. We have a profound sense of isolation. You don't read about yourself in books. You don't read about yourself in the newspaper unless it's around some kind of criminal investigation or criminal activity. And when that happens, you begin to view yourself through the lenses of your oppressor. You begin to think that's all we do, is commit crimes and stuff like that, because that's all you can read about. You don't see anything else that we are involved in. You don't see our lives and the struggles that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. So we think it's really important to have this opportunity to have compañero Marcos to spend some time with us, and you with him. And also because he is the labor attaché for the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C. And we think it's again important so that we break through this sense of isolation that sometimes we experience in our community. Nobody cares about us, and the way the government and the media treat us, it's an easy conclusion to come to. So there are people out in the world who understand struggle, who understand suffering, who've been involved in it themselves. And when you talk about Venezuela, it's a really important place. I was in Nicaragua in 1980, January 1980. Or was it 81? It was Reagan was being inaugurated, so it would have been 81. He was elected in November of 80, and then so January 81, when he went into office, I was in Nicaragua. And at that time, what was really interesting, this is a conference in solidarity with the people of Nicaragua. And I think the slogan was, Si Nicaragua venció, El Salvador vencerá. Because at that time, El Salvador was involved in revolutionary movement too. This is movements of poor people who trying to get the boot of Uncle Sam off their necks so that they can begin to control their own lives. And as quiet as it's kept, you know, they used to refer to much of what they call South America, Latin America, as banana republics, because you had United Fruit from the United States being a major player, not only economically, but through its economic power, not only in Latin America, but in Washington, D.C., they were able to overthrow governments at will. Anytime a government stood up and tried to take the resources for the people, then United Fruit would be involved in overthrowing them. They were therefore characterized as banana republics, which was, you know, you go to Publix or someplace and you get your bananas, chances are they were picked green, right? Picked green so that the people themselves can't even use them, right? And thrown into ships that ended up in Publix and supermarkets that, you know, in this country and other places. So when I was in Nicaragua, they had succeeded in Nicaragua at that time of overthrowing the Somoza regime. And Somoza was somebody who had been put in power by the United States. And the Sandinista revolution overthrew the Somoza regime in July of 1979. And I was there in January of 1980. The revolution was still fresh. You could smell it. And what was so powerful about Nicaragua is that the majority of people in Nicaragua were under 15 years old. They were 15 years or younger. Youth, you know, was an extremely explosive situation. That's what frightens them about Africa today, because more than 70% of the people in Africa are less than 30 years old, right? So it's a young continent of more than 1 billion people. And so in Nicaragua, to get off the airplane at the airport in Managua and to see the banners up that look just like the banners that we do, right? Fresh revolution. And at this conference at that time, all kinds of people were coming to express solidarity with the Nicaraguan revolution. And I remember the greatest applause that was given when they would announce the delegations that were coming into the conference. The greatest applause was given to the people of Vietnam. All the people that stood up and cheered the Vietnamese, because the Vietnamese, by themselves almost, had defeated the U.S. and rescued their country and their people. So now the resources of the people of Vietnam were being turned over to them. And all the people there just had this extraordinary sense of solidarity that they shared with the Vietnamese. But the thing that was striking was that when the Venezuelans came in, all the Venezuelans at this time, they came in, they were the best dressed people at the conference. They had, you know, like alligator briefcases and alligator, I mean, they were, because it was the oil, right? And this was a regime that was using the oil and the resources not for the people, right? And in fact, the U.S. and the local ruling class were the people who were living off the oil at the expense of the people. So then what has happened is, in Venezuela today, is the man who the U.S. loves to hate, Hugo Chavez. You heard of Chavez, right? And what Chavez has done has been an incredible bit of work, because he is trying to rebuild a society that will feed the hungry, that the poor people themselves will be in power. And so that most of the resources coming from the oil, I was talking with compañero Marcos today, because he was talking about there's a struggle that's going on because there's a sector of the leadership, some of the leadership in certain areas in Venezuela. They're saying that they're struggling because they want sustainability. They're concerned about sustainability, because you got the oil resources, but you know, what do we do with it? And Chavez is saying, what we do with it? We give it to the poor. We give it to the poor. And so he's building hospitals and schools and clinics and other things like that. That's where the vast majority of the resources are going. It's incredible, you know. And this is a government that's reviled and hated by the United States. So all you got to do is pick up a newspaper. I saw in the news today or yesterday, they were saying that Chavez was speculating that the U.S. government had the technology that was giving people cancer, because Chavez himself has cancer. Then there are something like 8 presidents or leaders in governments in South America suddenly coming out with cancer, and many of them in so-called radical countries. And so they're mocking him in the U.S. media, like that's hard to believe. But we remember Tuskegee, don't we? Remember the Tuskegee experiment? I mean, it's not far-fetched at all. And also, we remember this. We remember the mysterious execution of John F. Kennedy, a president of the United States. And remember that they said that this man who killed him, what was his name? Oswald, they said killed him, right? And Oswald said he was a patsy. Remember Oswald saying that I'm a patsy? And so before Oswald went to trial, do you remember what happened? He was shot by whom? Jack Ruby, right? And what happened to Ruby? Anybody remember before he went to trial, what happened to Ruby? He died of what? Cancer. In a prison, in a jail right here. So, you know, like the U.S. can talk that like it's really crazy that something like that happened to people who don't understand the United States and how the United States functions. But we understand how it happens, so it didn't sound silly to me at all. It means that I got to watch what I eat and who's bringing it, right? But today, the Venezuela of today, the point I was making is quite different from the Venezuela of that period when I was in Nicaragua after the Nicaraguan Revolution. And we think that's extremely important. And we want us to have this relationship. And the two things that's important to us here, I think. One is we want to be able to express our solidarity and relationship with the Venezuelan government. Because I don't know if you knew it, but in Venezuela owns Citgo gas stations. Did you know they own Citgo? The service stations that you go to Citgo? Yeah, that's who owns it. And in many of the areas in this country where the zip code is where poor people live, they've reduced the prices. And Venezuela on a regular basis offers oil, heating oil and things like that at reduced prices for poor people in this country and various other places around the world. So that's what Hugo Chavez has done. He's moved to organize throughout South America separate monetary systems that frees them up from domination by U.S. and Western economic interests and have built relationships, economic relationships within South America so that they can become more and more independent. So they are reviled. Hugo Chavez is reviled, but he's not by himself. Because I remember not too long ago, you would read these articles that were celebrating the fact that Fidel Castro was getting old. They said Fidel going to die soon, and after Fidel dies, it's going to be over for that area. And then, of course, what happened is Hugo Chavez is there. And not only is Hugo Chavez there, but Evo Morales is there. You know, and throughout South America, we see more and more people who are fighting to take control of their economies and their sovereignty and their resources to benefit their own people. That's what we're about. That's what this movement is about. That's what it is. And so that they get reviled for the same reason our movement gets reviled. And so that's important, I think, for you to understand this. So we want to have this relationship with the government of Venezuela. And secondly, with the presence of Comrade Marcos here, we're establishing a relationship with our brothers and sisters, with those Africans who are in Venezuela, right? And so that's really important for us to do as well. And so Marcos represents that to us, which is an extremely important thing. And I'm going to say this for those of you who may not know, but our party is involved in work throughout the world. That we have party organizations throughout Europe, in France, in England, in Germany, in, what did I leave out? In Belgium, Europe. What did I leave out? Germany, Belgium, France, United States, in Europe. United Kingdom in Europe. We're in Canada. We're in Sierra Leone in West Africa. We're in the Bahamas, where we actually have organization on the ground. And our objective, what we're working for, is the emancipation of our people. Because we become convinced that there is not going to be a freedom for black people in the United States, quote unquote. That freedom is going to come for us as a whole people. And that our weakness is the fact that we've been divided and dispersed around the world and don't connect with each other. But because everywhere we are, we treated like a minority. They tell you in a minute, you're nothing but a minority. You're only 30% of the population in this country. They tell us that in a minute. And because you're convinced you're a minority, you act like a minority. When you think you're a minority, it means you don't have a sense of your own power, your own capacity to be free. But when you look at the fact that Africans collectively constitute more than 1.5 billion people, we are everywhere on this earth. But we've just been divided. We call ourselves funny names given to us by our oppressors. Today, they allow us to call ourselves African Americans, but I remember some other choice names that we've been since I've been alive. And but the reality is that, so we call ourselves African Americans, the Afro-Americans here now. We call ourselves Haitians in some places, we call ourselves Jamaicans and Trinidadians in some other places. We call ourselves by a lot of different names, but all of us are African people. And we become conscious of that, and we develop a movement that is capable of moving strategically to liberate ourselves as a people and to rid this world of systems based on slaves and slave masters and bosses and workers. That's what we're about. We want people to be able to have a decent life. It's about people being able to benefit from the product of our labor. It's about people being able to know that their children will have a future, not because a good white man or Uncle Tom Negro got elected, but because we have the control of that future in our own hands as a people. That's what we are struggling for. And so that's what it's about. That's what the government of Venezuela is trying to do too, and that's why we're so happy to be able to be here with compañero Marcos Garcia on today, and happy that you were able to come out and share this moment with us as well. So that's essentially, what I wanted to talk about. And again, I wanted to thank you all for coming out. And this is going to be an enjoyable meeting event. Compañero Marcos is, he's going to say a few words to introduce himself, and as much as he wants to say. But like I said, he's with the Venezuelan embassy, and we want to have an opportunity for you to meet him and him to meet with you. So probably some of the most important things are going to happen after everybody stops talking up here. Food is going to be there, and people can just mingle and talk with each other. You have an opportunity to discuss with each other. And of course, there will be an opportunity to ask questions, if you like, of Marcos once he makes his presentation. So Chimaringa, again, thank you so much for coming out and sharing this opportunity with us. I wanted to say that Chimaringa introduced some important people in this room. He introduced Bella as somebody who was performing, but she's also the leader of the local branch of the Uhuru Movement here. And also, I wanted to introduce Sister Pearlie McCullough. She is like a kind of mother of this movement. Sister Pearlie came to this movement several years ago after the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department murdered her son, a grandson, who was 17 years old. They said they had been following him for a while because they thought he was doing something, and they followed him into a parking lot, and they shot something like, 17 rounds into the car, and they killed him. Then they said it was the wrong person. Then they said, you talk about the cancer claim by Chavez, then they said they had 2 cameras on the police cars, but neither one of them was working. So that there was no way to have a record of the assassination. But it's a typical event in our communities. That's the point. It's typical, it's typical, it's typical. And Sister Pearlie came as a consequence of that struggle, and she's been here ever since because she knows it is typical, and it's not just her grandson that it happened to. So thank you so much for coming out, and Chimaringa Uhuru. Chimaringa. You gonna set up a mic?
Yeah, for the meeting.
Oh, okay.
So before you do that.
Okay.
Quickly, please.
I mentioned to you the movement that we have in various places throughout Europe. One of the things I did not mention to you that I think is extremely important and you should be aware of is that throughout the world there are massive demonstrations that are happening now. Africans are doing these demonstrations, and they center on the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo came into most of our consciousness in 1960 when the CIA and French and Belgian intelligence organizations executed an incredibly significant leader. His name was Patrice Lumumba, who had become the first democratically elected, the only democratically elected prime minister of Congo that had been controlled by the Belgians up until that time. And Lumumba became a threat because he wanted to use the resources of Congo for the people of Congo and for Africans in general. So Eisenhower and Kennedy, Eisenhower who was in office and Kennedy who followed Eisenhower in office, engaged in this whole process, and they helped to execute murder Patrice Lumumba. And it was a grotesque murder that they committed against him. After beating him almost to death on an airplane, they then shot him, and then CIA agents literally cut his body up and threw it in acid and then burned it. And there's a CIA agent who today has 2 of Lumumba's teeth in his pocket as souvenirs. So that's the Congo. And then since that time, in 1960, the Congo was run by a man who worked for the CIA. His name was Joseph Mobutu. He was an agent for the CIA and committed all kinds of horrible atrocities against our people up until recently, a few years ago. And I won't go into the details about how they got rid of Mobutu. But the point is, just recently there was an election, November 28th, in Congo. The people suffered. Many people have been pushed into exile. One of the leaders of our movement party in the United Kingdom was born in Congo. Many people have been pushed out of that country because of repression and other things like that. And with this election that happened on November 28th, there was a fraudulent election that was stolen. Masses of people from Congo have been demonstrating all around the world. Literally thousands of people in the streets in Paris, thousands of people in the streets of London, in Belgium, and even demonstrations in New York and Washington, D.C., in Toronto and Canada, and various places around the world. But the media is not writing anything about it because they don't want it to be something that's put out in the world. And so I'm telling you about this because it's something that you should be aware of. It's a critical battle. I will tell you this about the Congo. Let me see the hands of people here with a cell phone. Okay, good. Let me see the hands of people here with a computer. Okay. Did you know that the most important mineral that goes into the development of cell phones comes from Congo? 80% of all of that is called coltan. 80% of it comes from Congo. Since 1998, maybe 7 million African people have been killed in Congo in proxy wars that is led by the U.S. through black faces and what have you, over coltan, among other things. This is what's happening to our people. And so I wanted to alert you to the situation in Congo because just like Compañero Marcos is here today, tomorrow, and sometime soon, we're touring people to inform us about what's happening in the Congo as well. Now, what I want to do, it is my pleasure, my sisters and brothers and comrades, to present to you Comrade Marcos Garcia, who is the labor attaché from the Venezuelan embassy, who himself has a history first as a student organizer. This was during a time before the revolution when it was extremely dangerous to do things like that. He also was a labor organizer because he understood that all value that you see all around you, from computers to everything else, it comes as a consequence of labor. Human beings putting their hands to nature to create things that people end up treating as commodities and stuff like that. And so we understand the significance of the workers. That's why we're a working class movement as well. And this is part of the history of Marcos Garcia. There's much more And we'll let him come up and speak for himself. And I would like for you to welcome Marcos Garcia, please. Uhuru.
Well, thank you for the opportunity you give me to be here with you, to talk with you. That's what diplomats are supposed to do. Try to explain the reality of their country to the people of the country where they are working. I'm working as diplomat, but I'm always belong to a tradition of revolutionary organizations in Venezuela that date back to 1930 when the first left organization was organized in the country. If we go remote to the 19th century, we'll look at the liberation movement. Venezuela was the first country in South America that declared the independence from Spain. And through the 19th century, there was a lot of violent situation due to the problem of racial exclusion. You know, all our countries were organized based on the difference, the difference that the elite supposed exists between indigenous, black, what they call black, but they are in fact African, and white people, European people. We were talking with the chairman about the common interest that we have. As he said, what we have been doing in Venezuela during the last year, just developing different programs to overcome the situation of poverty and exclusion that we live. We had in 1998 about 70% of poor people living in Venezuela. Because of this program that have to do with housing, health, education, food, productions, and jobs, we right now reduce the poverty rate to 27%. So that's a big effort. And it's a big effort. Of course, we have to understand that Venezuela is an oil country. We have a lot of resources. Before, those resources were, used just to promote the interests of corporations. Right now, what we're trying to do is just try to promote the interests of people, to include people that have been systematically excluded from our country, and at the same time, try to help at international level. We have many programs going on in, for instance, the Caribbean region with Petrocaribe. It's an energy project that is used to help the Caribbean countries to overcome the situation they face in the area of energy, and at the same time have some resources to promote different projects, economic projects in all those countries. All the Caribbean countries are participating in Petrocaribe. In the U.S., as the chairman said, we have a heating oil project. Heating oil project is a project that helps poor people and indigenous people in the U.S. to have access to heating oil that in any other case they wouldn't have access to. We believe in cooperation. Together with Cuba, back in 2003, we organized the Bolivarian Alliance for the People of America, ALBA. It is an international project where right now there are 12 countries participating. Among them, we have Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, Dominica, Antigua, Barbudas, I don't remember the others. But all these countries, instead of, most of the time we understand international activity as a kind of competence, like the free trade agreement. The free trade agreement is supposed to allow different countries to free the market so that the different companies can compete among themselves, and we will see the best one be the owner of the markets. There was a free trade agreement signed recently, and in fact, the free trade agreement is just an agreement to promote the interests of corporations. That's the main issue. You know, workers don't count, neither in the U.S. nor in the other countries. In the case of, for instance, in Mexico, the agricultural sector in Mexico was destroyed, and that's why there are a lot of Mexicans coming to the U.S. You know, because they don't have jobs in their countries. Well, in the case of ALBA is designed to cooperate, not to compete. There is a good experience. For instance, we make an agreement with Cuba. We need a lot of doctors in Venezuela, and Cuba have a lot of doctors. And Cuba needs energy, so we exchange energy for doctors. While the doctors in Venezuela, Cuba have the energy. With Nicaragua, we exchange energy for agricultural stuff. You know? And so we have been working with other countries in that way, cooperate. We organize also an international health project called Misión Milagro. So people from different countries, even from the U.S., can go to Cuba and Venezuela and get a surgery, okay, that they have some kind of disease. Free, completely free. You don't have to pay anything. And those people are the people that didn't have any access to the formal health sector. Right now we are cooperating in the educational sector, for instance, in the Latin American School of Medicine. We organize a School of Medicine in Venezuela just like the one that Cuba have. And there are people studying there from all Latin American countries, even from some African countries. These are free, they don't have to pay anything to study medicine. But you know, it looks easy. It seems like it's easy to do all these things, but the first people that that graduate from that school this year, we graduate about 8,500 people. The formal medical sector of Venezuela said that it was a bad idea to get those doctors because they don't have the skills to be doctors. And there is a big discussion right now in Venezuela about that, because it seems that it is impossible to have a doctor outside the formal sector. It's not the formal sector, the traditional sector, I would say. So the doctors that learn medicine in terms of business, as in most of our country. The doctor that we are being graduating in the Latin American School of Medicine, learn medicine in terms of cooperation, in terms of helping people, of social interest, not the business. So there is a contradiction between the formal sector that we have, the traditional sector of medicine, and this new sector that we're working on, that we are organizing, because we won't have the Cuban working in Venezuela all their life. We need our own doctor, and we're working on that, you know. But now there is this big discussion with the organization of doctors in Venezuela. They think that it's something negative to Venezuela to have this amount of doctors. I understand that, you know, traditionally in Venezuela, we graduate annually like 1,500 doctors. And in the School of Medicine, we're graduating like 8,500 doctors. There's a big difference, you know. So that's the kind of problem that we are facing right now in Venezuela. As you know, we are not threatening the U.S. and any other country. We don't have tradition of international war like in our country. We've never been involved in any international conflict. We don't have tradition of terrorism. We don't know what is that. Of course, we suffered a terrorist attack in 1976 when Posada Carriles exploded an airplane, Venezuelan airplane, and killed about 75 people. And that guy is living here in the U.S. without any problem, completely free. We don't have nuclear weapons. We don't have nuclear energy. We don't understand how we can have relations with, different organizations that have different traditions. For instance, the media here in the US say that we have terrorists from the FARC, Colombia. Then we also have terrorists from Midwest. And we also have terrorists from Europe, from the ETA. They try to present Venezuela as if we have a school of terrorists in our country. But we cannot teach terrorism because we don't have experience of terrorism. That's the main problem. And what I think, living here in Venezuela, in the US for 4 years, is that what they're trying to do is to avoid that the people, not only in the US but in the international, that the government can use the resources they have to solve the problem of people, in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of housing. That's the main concern they have, because they're not doing that. We have recently a conference in Venezuela, a labor conference, a bunch like 7,000 labor activists meeting, and the President Chavez was talking in the conference. And he said that he has a commitment with working with the workers' movement. He's going to change the law. We have been trying to change the labor law around 10 years. He's going to change the law. He's going to change a lot of difficult situations workers are facing. We established as a public policy in the Venezuela government that no worker had to be outsourced. The traditional resource that corporations use to eliminate workers' rights, outsourcing. So you are working for instance, a factory, getting a good wage with social security, everything that they decide, you have to work right now with this other company outside our organization. You won't have this protection, and you will receive, instead of $30 per hour, you will receive like $15 per hour. So we forbidden that, and we're working to overcome that kind of tradition in which workers are excluded from all the formal sector of health, education, and housing through this. In terms of the African-Venezuelan situation, we organized a conference last year trying to connect all those African people that think that we have some right, that we need to come together to promote our interests, our own agenda. It was the first conference organized with this aim, because we understand that the right wing is trying to use the African movement to promote the neoliberal agenda. In fact, they organized a conference we organized a conference in July, and they organized a conference in August. Business conference, all this guy talking about businesses, with the support of multilateral organization, and talking about neoliberal projects, talking about free trade agreement. That was the main concern of that conference. We organized in our conference, we talk about, for instance, the situation of Haiti. The need that we have to have the economic support from the government. We propose to public fund in the country of Alba to develop projects that include Afro-American people. And when I'm talking about Afro-American, I'm talking about the African that live in America, not only in the US, because that's another problem. it seems that only the U.S. people is American, so we all are Americans. American, I live in the South. American that are here live in the North, but we all are Americans. In that conference, we also talk about the need to establish solidarity with the Colombian, Afro-Colombian that have been killed, just like in the Congo. It's the same thing, exactly the same strategy. The Afro-Colombian had their lands, and corporation want to develop the projects, but there is a problem. There are people living in those areas, and they have to talk with those people. Those people are African that live in Colombia. So the main solution that they find is just to displace the people, kill them and displace them, so they have to move to other place to see what they can do, and so that the corporation can develop the projects in the lands of the Afro-Colombian, just like they are doing in the Congo. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing. I think that we need to connect. We need to learn about each other. There is a lot of lack of information due to the situation that we have with the media. The media have a view of reality that promote the interests of corporations, mainly. We need to develop our own media. That will take time. We have that experience in 2002 when the coup d'etat was organized in Venezuela. We didn't have media at that time, just small, and the media of the state, public media. With all the media was controlled by corporation. So during the coup d'etat, nobody in Venezuela had any information about what's going on. So the only way in which we can have access to the information was through international media, CNN. You know what CNN is. But after that, the coup, we learned that we need media, So right now we're promoting the organization of media at different level, community level. I'm not talking about political media, just media where the people can say what they're doing and say what they think, in the community. For instance, if you have a community here, you need the media to talk and say what you think and what you're doing. That's what's happening right now in Venezuela. We have a bunch of new media. I was talking with the chairman. The Venezuelan revolution all revolution is different. And the Venezuelan revolution, the difference of the Venezuelan revolution is that first, we don't have one-party system. We have a multi-party system. The revolution is supported by different organizations. Recently, we organized the Unified Socialist Party. But there are a lot of people that support the revolution, but they don't like the party. And they are their own movement. And they are in the revolution also. Besides, we have the opposition party that receives support from the U.S. government here, in Venezuela. We have a bunch of, a coalition of 12 opposition party working in Venezuela, and they are going to participate in the next election that we're going to have in October, free election. We have an electoral system where that is controlled at different levels with machine and also with tickets, so you can have a proof of how the people vote and check that with the outcome of the machines. It's very difficult to make what they used to do in Venezuela, where dead people can vote. Right now, if you want to vote, you need to identify yourself in the machine, with the machine. So the people cannot vote anymore in Venezuela. And yes, I know. Yes, and you know what happened? It's interesting, and that's something that you know. Traditionally in Venezuela, the people that have the right to vote, the effective right to vote, were the middle class. Most of them, poor people didn't have access to vote because different reasons. For different reasons, sometimes they didn't have an identification card, so they couldn't vote. Other times there was in big towns with, I would say, 20,000 voters, there was just like one or two places where they can vote, so it was very difficult. When you look at the middle class neighborhood, there are plenty of places where you can vote, you know. So the opposition in Venezuela, they have been getting almost the same outcome of the electoral process that they used to get in the past. The difference is that poor people is voting, so that's the difference that made Chavez president and maintain him as the president of Venezuela. Because here, the media say that Chavez is a veto, he's president for life, but that's not true. We organize election for presidents each 6 years. We organize election for congressmen, councils, state, all the levels. And even at the middle of the period, when the president has 3 years, we have the right to recall him. And in fact, the President Chavez, in 2003, we have a recall process that President Chavez won. You know, so from my point, and even in the National Assembly, we have like something like 16 parties represented in the National Assembly. So it's, from the point of view of quantity, I feel that democracy in Venezuela allows more participation than in any other country, where in the country you just have two parties. Yeah. Like in Venezuela in the past, we have a bipartisan system, two parties that have the control of almost everything. Right now we don't have that system. We have a multi-system party, people from different sectors can participate. For instance, the indigenous people have the right to have 3 indigenous representatives in the National Assembly. That's new. And the only people that vote to elect those representatives are indigenous. The Afro-Venezuelan movement was asking for something like that, but you know, still we don't have enough consciousness in the leadership to understand this process, because I was explaining that the ideology of racism in Venezuela is different to the ideology of racism here in the States. Because in Venezuela they said that we don't have problem of racism. All of us are Venezuelans. We are equal. We are mixed. That's the concept. But when you go to look for a good job, you know, good job, good position, good houses, people that live in those places tend to be white. And the people that work in the worst job in the worst neighborhood tend to be black. So at the end of the day, we had the same outcome with a different explanation. Because what they did through that ideology was that many Venezuelan, African Venezuelan, lost the conscience of who they are. Yeah. You know, many of them don't know who they are. So when you talk about African, they say, "Oh no, African and Venezuelan. You are black." No, I'm not so black, you know. Yeah, it's funny, but that's the reality. Right now, we are organizing a census. The first one when we're going to count the African Venezuela. First time after the slavery system. So the last time we count African Venezuela we were on the slavery like in more than 100 years ago. But now, through the work of the Afro-Venezuelan Network Organization and many other people, we are working on that. We get a first outcome. One of the problems we have in Venezuela, the difference we have with the U.S. is that we don't know exactly what is the situation of the African Venezuelan population, because we don't have information, statistical information. We don't know how many African Venezuelans are living there, and we have the problem that many Africans that live in Venezuela, they don't believe of themselves as African. They believe that they are just Venezuelan. Others say that they are not African, that they are black. But they are black Venezuelan, so there are a lot of interesting situation that thing in the problem of the African in Venezuela. But there are some other positive things. For instance, I was telling to my brother here that the Afro-Venezuelan music, the traditional Afro-Venezuelan music is in Venezuela is mainstream. Where you find a group of 200 Venezuela. For instance, we have a game of the Venezuelan soccer team with the Salvador soccer team in DC. And there are not too much Venezuela living in DC, but we find like almost 200 Venezuelan meeting them to support our national team. And you know, after some beers, they began to dance with the drums. And you know, there are not too much Africa from Venezuela living in the U.S. More of them were white skin or, you know, not so black as they used to be in Venezuela, but they feel that that's the culture, you know, that's their music. Yeah. But they don't know that music comes from Africa. Yeah. They don't understand that. Yeah. They say that's Venezuelan music. So, well, you know, I will have time to talk with you, depending, we can talk about the interest you have. I don't know what you want to know, so I just talking about different things. I will be here sometime, so we'll have the opportunity to talk about a specific situation. We have a meeting trying to put in place some projects, just the first step of some projects we can work on. We have been working in other projects. There was a delegation of the Uhuru Movement in Venezuela in the conference that we organized in July. I think it is the first formal contact that we have between this movement and Venezuela. I've been proposing that some of the activists of the movement can visit Venezuela so that they can learn about what's going on in Venezuela in different areas. Well, I think that we had a lot of things to do in the next year in terms of international activity, because the main thing of international activity is the connection. If we don't connect, it will be impossible to do anything else. And we need to have solidarity. We need to have support from each other, you know, to cooperate. Cooperation is our main objective at this time. And in the case of Venezuela, we have been cooperating with countries, with government, with local governments, and with organizations. Well, we have a very wide approach to the issue of cooperation. Traditional cooperation is a relation between government, and we understand that, but we also understand that there are people, and we are working in what we call people diplomacy. The diplomacy that helps to connect people with people. That's what we are trying to do here in the US. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
We want to open the mic and give you an opportunity to ask some questions. And I just wanted to say, however, that I think it's really important what the comrade just talked about in terms of media and having to have our own media. Even as this meeting right now that we're having is being broadcast over the internet. We have through Uhuru Radio. And it's also being videocast so that people are able to see and listen to this. And all over the world, in fact, the people everywhere who are connected to Uhuru Radio. And so people are participating that way, and you should support it. You should support uhurunews.com. Go to it and you can get to Uhuru Radio as well. I also want to say that I heard people laughing when Compañero was talking about how people Africans in Venezuela said, "I'm not African, I'm Venezuelan." Well, in the United States, I hear them say, "I'm not African, I'm Venezuelan too." I mean, so it's a contradiction that we face in terms of an assault on our identity as a people. That's part of what imperialism has done to us, what colonialism has done to us. And so that we are ignorant of our own identity, and we call ourselves by names and terms that have been imposed on us. I'm going to give you an example, one that I use commonly. Like in West Africa, there's a small place that's called Cameroon. And, people call themselves Cameroonians. And what most people don't know is that the word Cameroon comes from the Portuguese word for shrimp. Because when the Portuguese first got there, they found a lot of shrimp when they first went into that area. So you got all these Africans walking around calling themselves shrimp. But they're not shrimp any more than we are Negroes or Negro Americans. You can't get on a ship in Africa as an African and then get off in Venezuela as a Venezuelan. If we got on the ship as Africans in Africa, when we got off the same ship, unless that was a magic ship, when we got off that ship, even Dr. Spock couldn't do this, when we got off that ship in the United States, we were still Africans. And I think that's fundamental, important for us to understand. But when they do that, they fracture your consciousness, and then they limit your ability to struggle and to organize and to unite with each other. And unity is a critical thing, as has just been mentioned. So I'd like to open it up now, and for any of you who might have questions, and don't think there's any question that's that's too stupid or something like that to ask. Ask any question that you might have, and some of it may be political, and you may just want to know how the brothers and sisters are doing in Venezuela. Or if not how they're doing, how they do it in Venezuela. So I'd like to turn it over and to you and to Marcos Garcia to further this discussion. Uhuru.
Bruce Wright.
Yes, Reverend Bruce Wright of the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, and I was wondering, in your estimation, how important is it at this point, with all the global struggles going on, revolutionary struggles and the Occupy movements, how important is it to unite poor and oppressed peoples at this juncture across international lines?
Okay, so you got. Oh, you want to answer this question first, then I'll recognize. Then you second.
Okay, well, I think it's important. The problem is that it's not easy. Most of the time, poor people is very concerned with, they are looking for a job, they're looking for a house, they're looking for, a lot of things. They are very active trying to live, to find a living. And the first thing that we need is to create organization. That's what we learned in Venezuela. It was not easy at the beginning. I've been working during 12 years in terms of creating different projects that help us to promote the participation of people. And at the beginning, it was difficult, but because they didn't know how to manage a project, for instance, they didn't have any knowledge. There was some project where the people believed that it was, some resources that the state gave them, and that they don't have any responsibility for the resources. So we have been experiencing a process in which people have to be trained, they have to learn how to organize, how to coordinate, how to participate. Of course, there are different types of poor people. For instance, it's not the same when you go to a community where the people is poor but they have tradition. Like, for instance, the indigenous communities. It's easier there because even though they are poor, they are persons that have a culture, that have a tradition, that know who they are. But when you go to a community, for instance, some community that we have in Venezuela, from people that used to live in the countryside, and because they didn't have jobs in the countryside, they have to move to the city, and in the city they find and they mix with different people from other areas, and they didn't have access to education, and they love the tradition they have in their town. So you will find people that didn't have enough values to promote, some kind of organization. It's more difficult. So even though it is important, it is not an easy task. It's really difficult to organize and to work at that level. That's why I think that we need to work in different sectors, not only in the project with the poor people that is necessary, but also with workers, for instance. Because when you work, you learn some kind of discipline in your job. You have to be there at some time, you have to leave at some other time, you have to administrate some money, it's different. In the case of the African movement, I feel that the African movement has been very involved in, for instance, issues of culture, of history, but they are not so concerned with the economic problem of poor people. In the case of Venezuela, that's our experience. For instance, if you have a good job, you will have a lot of problems solved. So you need to organize people to look for good jobs. And if you want to organize at that level, you have to work with unions, you have to work with cooperative movement, and with people that deal with those issues. And what I understand, the tradition of poor people is people that didn't have access. So in that case, we have to develop projects to give them some access that they don't have. For instance, in housing, in health, in education. It's like a different type of organization. But it's something that had to be done. Poor people have to participate, and it is the only way in which a revolution can go ahead, because the current system that we are being facing all around America is a system in which only a few middle class sector have access to all the services, health, education, housing, jobs, good jobs. Most of the people didn't have access to that. Just they work, they work one day and the other day they don't know what to do, or they don't have a house, they have to live in a very bad house, it's almost destroyed, or they don't have access to health, they don't have doctors. So the situation of the organization of poor people is that, and we need to work at different levels with different organizations. We need to promote the coordination and connection of the organization that work at that level. That's what I understand with the participation of poor people at the international level. Is the participation of people organized and with experience, with something to say about what's going on.
David, if you can speak up because you don't have a mic.
Okay. Yeah. I just really want to appreciate this process right here, and I'm glad that you made it here. I'm really eager to get a lot of information, and so really you kind of touched on the first question that I had, but yet still I had two questions I would. One was, I know you mentioned in terms of the progress that's going on in Venezuela in terms of with the workers and how poverty has improved by over 27%. I was and then you mentioned as far as the African question as well. I was wondering if there's any campaigns or any programs that are being organized right now by the government in order to fill the African workers question from as far as education to even programs within the community to build economic development. And then my second question was, I sort of heard something in I've been reading the news and stuff like that, and I heard that Obama kind of made a criticism in regards to Venezuela's solidarity with Iran and the Middle East or what have you, so-called Middle East. on that if that is the case, and you know exactly what's the role with so-called Middle East and Venezuela in terms of your relationship.
Okay, well, in terms of the projects, there are a lot of projects in the, but there is not like a project directed to the African Venezuelan community. But African Venezuela live in poor communities, most of them. So the projects organized by the government to face this situation affect the life of African Venezuelan in terms of education, for instance. And when we talk about education, we're talking about the way in which we are educated, you know, with our own tradition. That's something that we have been working on, because the traditional school, not only in Venezuela but all around this continent, teach us based on an Eurocentric model. Right now, we're developing different models, trying to incorporate the tradition of our own communities. There are a lot of projects of cooperatives organizing in the area of Barlovento, one of the African Venezuelan regions, agricultural projects, tourism projects. There's a project food when we organize the distribution of food with the support of the government. So we are working on that. Right now, well, the health project, you know, Mission, we have the Mission Milagro that is at the international level, and Mission Barrio Adentro is that's translated inside the neighborhood, where the doctors go to the communities. And as I told you, the problem that we have is that as we don't know exactly where formally, I would say, where the Afro-Venezuelan are, because we don't have any statistic of the population based on that concept. We don't have still a specific information. That's something that we need, you know, to see how we are doing with these different programs and projects. In relation to the Middle East and Iran, you know, Venezuela is an oil country. Iran is an oil country, oil-producing country. Sorry. Even Iraq. You know, when President Chavez became president, the first year in 1999, he visited Iraq. Nobody wanted to go to Iraq. Nobody. President Chavez went to Iraq. He had a meeting with Saddam Hussein to talk about oil. That's our main industry. So we have the same situation with Iran. We have relations that date back to 1946. It seemed as if with the President Chavez was when we began to have relations with Iran. Well, an old traditional relation with that country. We have interest in the oil exporting organization, OPEC. We're a member of OPEC. We have been developing some cooperation project, building some factories in Venezuela. And that's all. It's a relation, I think, with any countries. We understand that the U.S. have differences with Iran, but there is a problem between Iran and the U.S. And the U.S. cannot tell us our international policy. You know, that's our own business. We have to inside. We even propose a Pacific solution to the situation of Libya through the ALBA countries. They didn't take into account that proposal, so the one that made the African Union. It made something similar proposal. Right now, we sent like months ago a delegation from the ALBA country into Syria, because we know what it's trying to do with Syria. Yes. You know. What's the main concern? The main concern we have is that we cannot allow this kind of international actions, you know, against other countries, violent action against other countries, because then we won't have like international law, you know, rights. You have the right to have your country and live in your country the way that you want to live, like the living we're living. That's your right. Nobody outside your country can go to your country, destroy your country to organize a different government because they don't like you. In the case of Iran, you know, if we allow the same situation that Libya live happening in Iran and then in Syria, who will be the next? Will be Venezuela. You know, so it's a problem of international geopolitics. You know, we're working at a level in which we have to promote the interests of the countries that are similar to us in terms of production, industry, in terms of political interest. We are not, as I said before, we are not working at any level trying to organize an international aggression against anybody. You know, we don't have that tradition. But they try to present us as if we were a terrorist country. And that's the real situation. I feel that as a community, you have to take into account all those developments, because what happened? In the 60s, I know that there was a very difficult process in which a lot of people was in jail or was killed, and you know, nobody knew about that in other countries. It was like a national affair here. Something similar happened in Venezuela in the 60s. Also, we have the same period where a lot of people was killed. And in other South American countries in the 70s, with the Operation Condor operation, even it was an international coordination to kill people from different countries. You know, right now the situation in Latin America is different. We have a lot of progressive government in Latin America. I feel that you need to understand that right now you have like possibilities to do things that before were almost impossible in terms of cooperation or joint development. You can do that now. It won't be easy, but it can be done. You know, we can work together in different areas. And that can help you in your communities in what you do here. And at the same time, it will allow you to understand what's going on in Latin America. And in the case that we face a situation similar to the situation that we're looking at in the Middle East, you will have the understanding to organize solidarity with our countries. So it's like the same thing, you know, the mutual interest that all of us have.
In just a few days, in this country, a lot of people are going to be celebrating the birth of Martin Luther King, January. And I think it's really important to be able to connect. That's why it's so important for us to have these discussions, because a lot of people understand what happens in this country in the 60s in isolation. King was murdered. King was assassinated in the 60s. Malcolm X was assassinated in the 60s. Bobby Hutton of the Black Panther Party was assassinated in the 60s. Patrice Lumumba in the Congo was assassinated in the 60s. You had Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, first president of independent Ghana, was overthrown in 1966. And of course, as was mentioned, Operation Condor, this is something that was sweeping counter-revolution, usually with the United States in the center or in the head, was sweeping the world at that time to push back revolutionary struggles. A lot of times people say, well, you know, what happened in the 60s. People just stopped struggling. People didn't stop struggling. People were murdered. 1972, the United States was involved in overthrowing the government of Chile, Pinochet. There were thousands of people who went to Chile after Pinochet was elected, assuming that this was a socialist government, that they could be able, and these were revolutionaries from around South America. And then, of course, under U.S. leadership, when that government was overthrown, they were pushed into stadiums. Thousands of revolutionaries from throughout South America were massacred, were murdered as a consequence of that. And I just want to say, in terms of Iran, it's really important to understand some things about Iran. One of them is that the United States government overthrew the democratically elected Mohammad Mossadegh in 1954 and replaced him with the Shah, who terrorized the people and who they used in a way similar to what they used Israel as a policeman, in that region to protect what they've called their interests in terms of oil and what have you. And they want to act surprised that the Iranian people, when people used to demonstrate in this country from Iran, students, when we were with them, they had to put sacks over their heads so that they could not be identified, because the Iranian secret police, Savak, if they identified them, then they would go and do things to their families back in Iran. So that's what the United States has been involved in, and to be able to say that something is wrong because they would have a relationship with Iran. And then I'm going to say this, and they tell Iran that they cannot have nuclear power. They say because the Iranians are going to develop nuclear weapons. The Iranians say they want to use it for energy. But the point is that how can the United States, with more nuclear weapons than anybody on earth, the only country that's ever used nuclear weapons against somebody, how can they sit here and tell the people of Iran they can't have nuclear weapons or nuclear energy? That's the hypocrisy that we're looking at with the current world order, and that's why people like Hugo Chavez and other revolutionary forces represent a problem for them, and that's why we have to get organized during this critical point in history. Somebody else had a question?
Brother Garcia, it's a pleasure being in your company, not only as a labor attaché out of the Venezuelan government, but as my neighbor, because I was born in Guyana. And as you mentioned earlier, the Caribbean is benefiting from the Petro-Caribbean. As you probably do know, that there has been an ongoing feud between Guyana and Venezuela with regard the area whereby some oil has been discovered. I know that a Canadian company has been hired to explore that oil. What is the status of the locale of that oil refinery, if you want to call it, that possibility of that oil being drilled off the coast of Guyana, and exactly whose territory it is?
Well, they are discussing the issue of the territory, so it's a legal thing that had to be agreed. We had to agree about that. The opposition movement in Venezuela tried to promote like a kind of situation in which we didn't care about our territory, and the Guyana was taking away some thing that belongs to Venezuela. And the same happened with Colombia some time ago. President Chavez said that we are brother countries, and we had to solve our situation through negotiation and discussion. That even though the opposition were interested in some kind of conflict between Venezuela and Guyana, we didn't have any interest in that as a country, as a government. There is nothing yet agreed in terms of, some kind of I would say, agreement in which we can work on that area, who's gonna get the oil, how will be done, there's nothing. Still we're discussing that situation. But the point is that we didn't accept as a country that we're going to have a conflict with Guyana because of that. And there is a lot of people in Venezuela interested in that, because it will be very useful for the interests of the corporation that we have a kind of conflict with the two countries. I don't know specifically, there is nothing as far as I know. And I know they are discussing, there are some kind of binational teams trying to establish some kind of legal framework to see how we can agree on something. I know that it's going to take some time. It won't be easy because the problem of borders are always difficult. We have a difference with Colombia, and the last time we tried to agree on something was in 1982, I think. It was a kind of pre-agreement, and when it was public, nobody agreed with that. There was a lot of difficulty. So I think that the only way in which we could solve that kind of situation is through some kind of cooperation agreement, working together. But I don't know if that can be agreed between our two governments. Because there are, I think that in Guyana you will have the same situation. People that say, that belongs to us, or so want to take it. It's normal. That's the same discussion we have with Colombia. But the Venezuelan government understands that any discussion has to be solved through negotiation. That's the main point. The other point is how long will take the negotiation. Evo Morales said recently, because we have the difference with Chile in relation to the access of Bolivia to the sea, that he won't be discussing with Chile during 100 years because he needs a solution right now. And that's true. But I don't see that in the case of the difference between Guyana and Venezuela, we have that kind of expression, It's different. We have a lot of time discussing that. And even in the 70s, there was some interest in promoting the conflict between our two countries at the military level in the 70s. So what I know is that we have to be careful with that. We have to be smart. And we have to discuss and try to find a solution, but my understanding is that any solution had to be like some kind of cooperation agreement. That will be the only way. Because any agreement in which somebody lose something will have a lot of opposition inside the country.
Uhuru, I want to give Comrade Garcia and the chairman both a big hand. We've had some excellent. And I know everybody learned a lot, because I learned a lot just in a very short amount of time with Comrade Garcia being here about Venezuela. What we're going to do now is we're going to eat, and people might want to talk to Comrade Garcia.
Yeah, one more question.
Have to make it very brief.
Quick. Well, we know the ambassador is full of a reservoir. That's why you look at President Yuba back there. My question is, do you see an infusion of the Chinese in Venezuela? Because I've observed that in the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica, the Chinese are taking an infusion to take over the economics. Is that taking place in Venezuela?
Well, we have a lot of pre-agreements with China. We hope to increase, in terms of energy, to increase the exchange from 500,000 barrels per day to 500,000, sorry, to 1 million, something like that. And sometime during the, President Chavez said that sometime during the next 10 years or 15 years, China will be the main social partner of Venezuela, in substitution of the US, that is the main social partner that we have right now. What happened is that China is a country that has been developing very fast. They have a lot of resources. They have a better administration than the capitalist countries. I think that right now they have more possibility to cooperate with other countries than the US and the European countries because of the debt that they have. You have a big debt here and also in the European countries. So the role of China in the international economic situation will increase in the next years. Of course, it's like any international agreement. You need to have national sovereignty to make the agreement. You know, I don't think that our countries have to change from one kind of dependence to another. Because at the same time that we are making this agreement with China, we're working very hard promoting the integration of the Latin American countries. We need to have a regional base. We need to increase the trade exchange among the Latin American countries. We need to promote our relationships, strengthen our relationships. And that will be like the first step to guarantee our sovereignty as countries. You know, the relation that we can build among the Latin American countries. We look at China as a partner, important partner, because you know they have technology, they have resources, and we have been making a lot of agreements. They have been helping us in building a lot of infrastructure in Venezuela, housing, in transportation. We have agreement in oil production. I think they are all around the Latin American country. Not only in the Caribbean or in Venezuela, all around. Brazil, I think that right now Brazil is the main trade partner of China in terms of the Latin American country, and Brazil is a very big country.
Stay right here for a second. I'm going to call up the deputy chairperson of the African People's Socialist Party to make a presentation to Comrade Garcia.
Uhuru, before I make this presentation, I just want to give a couple of shout outs to people in the audience that are here. Tammy Harris, who is the administrative assistant to the Office of the Chair. Also, I have a new neighbor who is here. Her name is Kanisha Williams. I want to give a shout out to her. I also want to give a shout out to Pop Lancaster, who has been our photographer for over 30 plus years. Is that right, Pop? And also I want to recognize Maxine Robinson, who has also been around the Uhuru Movement for a very long time. And the chairman also mentioned the Burnsville newspaper, Uhuru News and Radio, and I would like to give a shout out to the Agitprop department, Nabinga Dimbaswe, who is the director of Agitprop. And I just really want to recognize Agitprop, because without Agitprop, a lot of things couldn't happen. You would not be able to get this news, you would not be able to see the Burnsville newspaper. And I want to recognize some of the staff in that office. We have Miss Minnie, who is here. We have Sandy Thompson, who is here, and I'm glad to see you, Sandy. As well as Jesse Nevels, who is instrumental in making Agitprop happen. So without further ado.
Well, let's recognize the food person.
Oh, yeah.
The one who organized the food.
Yes.
It's still there.
Yes, yes. We'd like to recognize our comrade, Baye Moye, who has been around the organization for many, many years and has always been on the front court of helping us put anything we need together. So I want to really recognize Baye Moye for her. So without further ado, we have a plaque that we want to present to Comrade Marco Garcia on the behalf of the African People's Socialist Party USA for your continued support and the liberation of Africa and African people worldwide. If you look on your table, we have, I just found out some interesting information today from Comrade Garcia. The flag for Venezuela, it has, on this particular flag, it has 7 stars, right? And it should be 8. And also the little horse that's right in the corner, it should be flying to the left, and it's to the right. So we just found out that they have a new flag. So we really want to say, make sure when he comes, we're going to make sure we have the correct flag for him and his nation.
That's the flag of the opposition. The one that we got on the table is the flag for the reactionaries, right? Because Chavez, when he went to power, he changed the flag, right? So to make it inclusive, there's a province that was left out, he added the province, and he took that horse, he freed that horse. That horse that before was colonized. So he set the horse free. And ours still has a colonial horse and a neo-colonial flag. So it was a big error on our part.
Right. So in saying that, we want to also give him a flag of the African nation, which is the red, black, and green flag. So we want to everybody for coming out and supporting this historical event. And I just want to say that 2012 is coming and that we hope that you will continue to support the African People's Socialist Party because we have a lot of dynamic things coming up in 2012. We have our 40-year history of the party that we're getting ready to celebrate. We're also getting ready to celebrate our APSP USA plenary in February. So we have a lot of things that's coming out. We're going to be launching Uhuru Vintage here in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're going to, which is a clothing line that we're going to be launching. And we're also going to be launching our smoothie bar that's located in the Tyrone Woods Community Gym on January 14th. So we want people to come out and support us and just come out and support us all year long.
And I need to mention to you that Ron Bob Simple, who we told you is also Marcus Garvey. That's his day job. But no, that's he does this incredible Marcus Garvey presentation, but he's an actor and has appeared in a number of productions all around the world. And coming up is 7 guitars. And I don't have on my glasses, but you want to say when that is and where?
Yes, starts January 18th through February 26th at the American State Theater on 3rd Avenue. And officially, the opening night is January 20th. That's written by August Wilson, and it's another fabulous production that I'm looking forward to because when you see, you'll find out exactly why I say that.
Right on.
So I do have a few flyers in case those of you might be interested.
Good. Yeah, I want to try and take my grandsons to that. My two youngest grandsons, there's my grandson also, Damon Rio, and his wife, and who is a real factor in working with our economic development program right now. So people can eat, I think, right? Yes. Oh, okay. I turn it back over to you, I'm told. Did you want to say anything?
No, thank you. Thank you for the presence. It's, very important because it makes history. You know, my grandchild was in the U.S. with this organization back in 2011, December. It's a very interesting day, 30th of December. So there are two times when I've been working at this day of the year. Once when I was trade union, I was discussing a collective agreement. My wife was crazy because I keep working all day long. And this is like a very nice activity, I would say. Nice, and I hope that we can, as I told you, we can do many things in the future because it's necessary, simply necessary. I told the chairman that I've been looking in the U.S. for people like you that, are organized, have been working a long time and look like that you need more connection, you are very, very close because of the experience you have to face in terms of the environment, when you live the political and social environment. And right now I feel that it's time to open and go through different experiences and relationships. And in Latin America, you will find a lot of very interesting things. I keep telling to the African people and the US people that, well, you always look to Europe. And you have in Africa, and you get your country because of any situation you go to Europe. You have to go to Latin America. It will be better for you. You have more connection, more support than in Europe. Or if they don't go to Europe, they go to the US. Something in some way similar, And in Latin America, you have like a free region, different level of freedom, of course. But you will find a lot of the very interesting situation in our countries, not only in Venezuela, also in Ecuador, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Salvador, Cuba, a lot of places that you can go and learn and connect. So thank you.
Uhuru, comrades, again, I want to really thank Comrade Garcia and the chairman and all of you for coming. And now we're going to eat.